Hello, Bio 150 students. I'm Kevin Engel. I'm the science librarian. I know that you have been generating questions about plant responses. You've been working with Arabidopsis thaliana, particularly, and how they respond to various stresses. And I know that you'll be needing to find some primary and secondary literature for an experiment you are planning. So the goal for this recording is so that we're all on the same page when it comes to finding primary and secondary literature, academic literature here at Grinnell. I want to stress that asking questions is a really good thing. Of course, you can't ask questions in a video like this, but I will show you in a few minutes the best way to get a hold of me. Of course, you're talking already to Professor DeRitter, but if you have questions about a particular database or a source or finding information or getting full text information into your hands, please contact me as well, and I will tell you here in a couple of minutes, show you in a couple of minutes the best way to do that. So you have access to a lot of information here at Grinnell, a lot of information, millions of pieces of information. Print books, which you don't have access to right now, but 700,000 or 800,000 ebooks, over 100,000 journals, magazines, and newspapers, and of course, millions of individual articles, streaming video, audio files, data sets, thousands and thousands of those. So that's a nice thing to do. That's a really great thing to have access to all that information. But there's also a challenge to that. How do I filter through all that information to find just the specific information that I need? And that's what we're going to be doing here in this recording. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go from there. You're familiar with this page already, the college homepage, and I'm sure you know your way around here, but just to make sure, again, we're all on the same page, I'm going to go under academics, click on libraries right down there. And here's the library's homepage. And as I scroll down just a little bit, you'll see right here this search box, and this is for our catalog. The catalog is called Primo, but I'm going to suggest that you don't want to search Primo directly for this tutorial, or in fact for most classes that you take at Grinnell. And I will show you a little later probably the best use for the catalog. But we'll keep going down the page and we'll come to this link called Subject and Course Guides. And that's what you want to click on. As you see here, and I'll go fairly slowly so it doesn't make you seasick, we have a lot of subject guides way down to the bottom here, all kinds of subject areas. Now I'll go back up again. And for the purposes of Biology 150, of course, we're going to use the Biology Subject Guide. So the benefit of the subject guides are that instead of you having to figure out which of our 600 plus databases might be the most useful for you to find the information you need, all those databases and all those resources are broken down into these subject guides. So each subject guide is going to contain links to the most important information resources for that particular area. And it could be biology, history, English, chemistry, anthropology, whatever it is. These subject guides are basically your base, the main library page you need while you might be taking a course in biology or anthropology, whatever it is. In fact, bookmark this page. Not only does it give you access to the most important information resources, but it is very important for off-campus access to these resources. So when you're accessing our library resources from off-campus, you need to go through our proxy server. You don't need to remember that, but that authenticates you as a member of the Grinnell College community. And when you go through a library page, it automatically gets you through that proxy server. So just remember, when you're coming from off-campus, the most important, you need to access a resource through a library web page. And so use the subject guides as that anchor page to help you access things. On this page, you see my smiling face here, and this is the best way to contact me by email while we're doing distance learning. You can either go here or you can go over here to request a library lab. So if you wanted to set up a particular appointment, say, Kevin, let's meet Friday at 2 o'clock, you could do it this way, or you could do it this way. If you go through the library lab, you will be put into a form where you'll be asked to put in a little information about where you happen to be in the project you're working on. That will just help me prep before our meeting. But you can do here or just email me, whichever you would prefer. These tabs or sections kind of take you through the process of doing a project, like maybe the experiment that you're developing. And at each stage, you're going to find links to information which are appropriate at that point. So let's step through this a little bit. And I'm going to go under Evaluate. And I will say that this is the most source evaluation where you look critically at the information you have. So you get a journal article. Source evaluation means looking critically at the actual information in that article. Is it appropriate, valid, useful for your purpose? Plus, you need to look at where that journal article came from, what journal, etc. Source evaluation is the most important thing that you do in the course of a search for information. This is really a topic for another time because we could talk an hour about this. But I'll just point out as we look at this page is there are a variety of links here that'll give you more information. Plus, there are some videos that might be useful to you, particularly down here in the sense of primary and secondary literature. And I know that you've talked about that in this course. Primary literature being the actual detailed account of a piece of research written by the people who actually carried out that research. And so it's often, filled with jargon, statistical tests, genetic sequences, et cetera, it can be very densely packed with information. And the audience for primary literature are other researchers in the field. So it can be, depending on the knowledge that you have, pretty hard to understand. Secondary literature are things that are written at a much more understandable level because they're aimed at a different audience. They're aimed at, just people like you and me. But secondary literature can be very important to help you understand primary literature. This video might be of interest to you because it shows how to unpack primary literature to get the most out of it. So evaluation, extremely important. Take a look at these links. Primary and secondary literature, there are always examples of these here. If you're searching for it and you're not quite sure what you have, you can look at these examples to see which of those that you might have in that particular case. Or, of course, you can contact me or Professor DeRitter. Let's go on to define. As mentioned, define represents secondary sources, things in magazines, newspapers, etc., textbooks. Secondary sources are very important. They do a lot of very important things. They help you come up with ideas for a project, a paper. They help you if you're not quite sure what a concept involves. You can understand what it is quickly, answer fact questions, come up with search terms, phrases, names, a very important thing. We'll talk about that later. And if you already have a research question, it helps focus it. So don't forget about these things. For this particular assignment, I think you're finding both primary and secondary literature, but all the links here represent secondary literature at this stage. I'll just mention review articles, and we'll also show you an example of this later on. But review articles can be very important. If you're working in an area where there's a lot of research in that area particularly, periodically, people will go through and do a summary of the research to date in that area. It'll be a review article. It can be very academically written. But what they do, instead of you having to read 10 or 20 articles to get you up to speed in an area, somebody is doing this for you, summarizing the information, showing how interconnected it is. Plus, there'll be a big bibliography of primary literature sources at the end. a good recent review in the area that you're researching is worth its weight in gold, literally. There are some particular sources you can go to get reviews here, but just keep in mind you can also find them through a database, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. And then there's a whole slew of sources that may be useful for in terms of doing all these things we talked about above, coming up with topic ideas, understanding concepts, search terms, etc. For this particular tutorial, I would aim you at a couple of sources. This one, let's see if it comes up. We're going into the library catalog here. This is a general overview book on abiotic stress response in plants, and you can access it online from that link. Or you can go to the Arabidopsis book, which is an open access, peer-reviewed source. In essence, it's kind of an online textbook, but can be very useful as well. So if you're looking for this kind of secondary literature, overview literature, these are two good sources. These are two good sources, but in biology generally, there are a lot of sources for different areas. I'll mention one of the classic sources, secondary sources in biology are biology textbooks. And if you were on campus now in the science library, there's a whole shelf full of these things, which have been put there by the biology faculty. But as an online substitute, NCBI Bookshelf is a way to search within and get the full text of over 1,000 now textbooks and textbook-like sources. All right, let's move on from define to identify. The identify step is where you go to sources to find primarily primary literature. That is those actual in-depth counts of research from which you're going to pull out evidence which may help you bolster a hypothesis or compare the data you get to the data they get, etc. So these are the kinds of sources that often you're most likely to cite when doing a project. You may notice as you look at this page that some of these sources have various qualifiers, like for Google Scholar, OK source, better source, and down here, best source. And these qualifiers are based on the depth of subject coverage of that source, plus the usefulness of the searching platform. I'll just mention that Google and Google Scholar are not the first places you want to go when you want to find academic information, certainly primary literature. Google or Google Scholar do not cover any academic discipline very completely, plus the search interface is frankly very poor. So you can do better than that. And I want to particularly highlight two sources here: science primary literature, and then the best source down here, biological sciences, ag and environmental science, and Medline. Let's look at science primary literature. The niche of this particular database is that it is comprised of mainly journal articles, but also some books and book chapters that Grinnell College students, just like you, have used and found useful in the past. So going in here, you can find articles and other things that Biology 150 students have used in the past. For Arabidopsis in particular, there is a canned search, which you can click down here, and you will get many hits. But let me show you one record as an example. So here's an article about Arabidopsis thaliana under heat stress, title, authors, the description or the abstract of the article, subject headings, the bibliographic information, year of publication, volume, issue, pages. And then you'll see these links for finding the full text and find more like this one, the cited by. What this takes you to are the articles that have cited this one. In other words, this particular article, and then there are 14 that have cited this one since it was published. So if you want to look at an original piece of research and then trace it forward in time, these articles will be ways of finding related information. So if you find one, if this one that you see in this database is right on target, these are ways of finding related information, which might also be useful, but you're finding related information that's also published more recently. Now, you can find the full text here. And if you were on campus right now and you click this, you would get the full text of this article. But because you're off campus, you got to go another step. And let me show you how you do that. So by all means, click this link. But if you don't get the full text, here's what you want to do. Just go up here and copy this title. And then I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to our library catalog. Remember I said to bypass this link? Well, this is a good use for it. So I'm going to tell you that the best use of the library catalog is to find an access point for items you already know about, known items. So we're putting our title in there, clicking search. And here's our article. Click that. And it's telling me that the full text of this article is available here. So in essence, again, for the Science Primary Literature Database, click that link and find the full text. But if the full text doesn't come up, just copy the title of the article, put it in our catalog, search it, and more often than not, you will get a full text link. All right, so that's the Science Primary Literature, and this would be a good place initially when you're looking for things, because it's a good place to find that article or two or more that, again, Grinnell students just like you have found useful in the past. Let's move on to the best source, and that's down here, Biological Sciences, Agricultural and Environmental Science Database, and Medline. So you're going to search 3 databases at the same time. Let me click that. And here's an example. I'm coming from off campus. So I've hit our proxy server and it's asking me to authenticate myself to know that I'm a member of the Grinnell College community so I can get access. So I put in my username. That's my username without the @grinnell.edu. My password, this is my campus network username and password. I'm sure you've already done this already. Click login. And it comes up. So why is this the best source? Well, these 3 databases together provide the best and most in-depth coverage of the life sciences. They go back in time, back to the 1940s, and they cover between them probably something in the range of 25 to 30,000 journals published worldwide. So let's do a search in here. Early on, of course, you're dealing with Arabidopsis and you're dealing with environmental stress. And so let me type in a search and then I'll describe what I've done. I'm going to add a row, and the stress I'm going to use is drought, lack of water. So when you see a search interface like this, and I will say that this search interface developed by the company called ProQuest is probably the best out there on the market. It's the most sophisticated. But when you see a search interface with multiple boxes, you should regard each box as a place for a separate variable in your search. So for this search right here, there are 3 variables: Arabidopsis, stress in general, and then a particular stress, drought. So I'm going to put in words representing each particular variable, and they're going to be in separate boxes. These words, these variables, are going to be connected by and, or the Boolean and, which means the result of my search is going to be this, this, and this together. The Boolean and combines variables. over on the right-hand side of the screen, you see choices. So what you're searching here in this database are records, millions of records. And each individual record describes an individual publication. It could be mostly journal articles, but it could be a book, could be a book chapter, it could be a dissertation, it could be any number of things. The default is this NOFT, which basically means anywhere in the record except the full text. In other words, Arabidopsis could be in the title, stress could be in an indexing field, drought could be in an abstract, etc. The last thing is, note after the word stress and Arabidopsis, there's an asterisk. This is called truncation, and this is a very important thing, and you may want to make a note about this, because this is something that if you use it in your searching, it will make you right away a better searcher. One of the things that occurs when you search information in digital format is you have to think of all the different ways that someone writing about your topic, all the different ways they're going to describe it, what words they're going to use, what word variants they're going to use. And instead of typing in every word variant, for instance, for stress, you could have the word stress or the word stressor or the word stressors, etc. Instead of having to type all those things in, you can type the root of the word and an asterisk. Same thing with Arabidopsis. Arabidopsis and an asterisk would pull up Arabidopsis and anything that would follow that. So the Boolean and, that's important. Putting one variable in each box. The search fields, you can go in. Right now we use the default, and remember truncation to pull up word variants, plurals, possessives, etc. Okay, let's do our search. So you can see we get a big number of results, 9,649. That's a huge number. And that's not a number that we want to deal with. In other words, we don't want to look at 9,649. We want to break that number down to something that's closer to the things that we want to find. We can do this in multiple ways, but one way I would do it if I had a number like this, I would take a look at the first few of these to get a sense of how records for things that may be relevant are indexed. Let's use this one as an example. So this is an article published in 2012, which talks about drought stress in Arabidopsis thaliana, and it's talking about a particular protein that helps Arabidopsis adapt to drought conditions. So in looking at this, I can see that this is online with the kind of information I want. So the question is, how do I find more like this? Well, to do that, I go down here to these subject headings. And subject headings may sound like the most boring thing in perpetuity, but in fact, they're very important because the subject headings tie together this whole database, these millions of records. And these words and phrases describe what this article is about. So notice that when I look at this, the words that I had in my search, drought, stress, and Arabidopsis, are all subject headings. So right now when I'm doing my search, the words can appear anywhere in the record, but if I do a search and limit it to this area, I'm going to get things which are specifically about, drought resistance in Arabidopsis thaliana, which is the things I want, which are highly relevant. So I'm going to use that information, go back to my results, and redo my search, modify my search. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually put in the name of the full plant, Arabidopsis thaliana. And instead of this field, I'm going to say it's a subject heading. So it's going to be in the subject heading field. Notice that I'm treating this as a phrase, one word in front of another. In order to tell the computer that you should search it, this word right next to this word, you need to put it in quote marks. So just remember another key searching hint. When you search a phrase, water pollution, climate change, whatever, put the words in your phrase in quote marks. Stress becomes a subject heading. Drought becomes a subject heading. This is a much more tailored, precise search than the one I did formerly. So let's do that and see what we get. So I'm down to 1,837. That's quite a drop. And this set is much more relevant than my previous set, but it's still a big number. So how do I break this down? Well, now I'm going to go and use these options on the left-hand side of the screen, called facets, and you'll hear that term. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of move down here, and basically my goal over here is to eliminate the stuff from this list that I don't really want to look at. So the first thing is I'm interested in source type. Well, I want scholarly journals, primary literature is another word for it. I don't really want any of these because these are going to be secondary literature. So I want to eliminate those 20 things, those books and conference papers that I'm not interested in. So still 1,817. The second thing I could do is go down way to the bottom here in language. There are things in various languages. In my case, I'm going to stick with English, but this is a way to limit by language. So I'm going to click English. And I'm down to 1,800. Still haven't eliminated very many. Let's keep going down here. Publication date. Well, any of this might be of interest to me, but I'm particularly interested when I'm talking about Arabidopsis and how it responds to drought stress. We're looking for fairly recent information. So I'm interested in what's been done recently. Something that was done in 2002 might be great, but I'm interested, has there been an update to that research? So just as a kind of a placeholder, I'm going to pick the last 5 years. I'm going to click that. I'm down to 563. What else can I do on this side? Notice document type. So remember when we talked about review articles and how useful they can be. There's a lot of information here, obviously, that people have done, 563 in the last 5 years. I could use a good review article. So there's 4 reviews, so I'm going to click that. So here they are, 4 review articles. And this last one catches my eye, The Physiology of Plant Responses to Drought, which is very new, April 2020, appeared in Science. Let's click this. So why don't we use this record just, again, to make sure we're all on the same page. Let me just kind of break down this record to show you what you have here, because this is an example for all the other records in the database. Here is the title, in this case, of the article. Here are the authors. Here's the journal in which it appears in. Here's what's called the bibliographic information, volume, issue, date, pages. Over here is something called cite. You'll, of course, need to do a bibliography. You do bibliographies for your papers in all classes. Many databases now have this citation feature. So if you click this, you can get this particular information in all manner of citation formats. So for instance, APA 6th edition, this is what it looks like. You can either copy it and transfer it to a bibliography of paper, or you can export this information to a piece of software, a citation manager. We happen to use RefWorks here at Grinnell, among others, but so you can just copy and paste or export to a citation manager. This is the abstract of the article, a paragraph that tells you more about it. These again are these subject headings. In this case, there's only one, but in this case also, this is so new that this record is probably not completely indexed yet. And notice over here on the right, it says get full text. Sometimes if the full text is immediately available through this database, you'll see another icon right here and you can just download it. But if you don't, you'll see a get full text here. And if I click this, it's actually going to take you to our library catalog again. Here's our article, and it's going to tell you I can get the full text of the article through the journal Science by clicking on this link. More often than not, you will have, within 1 or 2 clicks, direct access to the full text of whatever it is that you're aiming for. All right, I want to show you one other thing. So we're in this review, and this review might be golden, really, for me. It's a brand new review. It's covering the physiology of plant responses to drought. It's a fairly short one, but it's attempting to kind of interconnect and summarize the literature to date, or at least since another review. And then it's going to have a nice bibliography of primary sources I can follow up. This could be a great source, but let's kind of backpedal a little bit. Notice that this one talks about hormone signaling, phytohormones and hormone signaling in terms of being important for plants to deal with drought stress. So I'm going to use this as, here's a new variable to my search. I'm interested in this concept of Arabidopsis and how it deals with drought stress. And here's this new variable thrown in here of hormone signaling. I want to find other things that talk about that. Of course, I got a review here, but let's pretend maybe that we don't see the review. So let's go back to our previous window, and I'm just going to take out the reviews so we get back to our previous set of 563. So one way to break things down when you have a big number, of course, is to break it down by facets and break it down, eliminating the things that you don't want to deal with in your search. But once you get to a point of, well, I can't really, there aren't any other options I want to choose at this point, then you need to start looking at what you're bringing up. And do you want to look at 563? Absolutely not. Do you want to look at 200? Absolutely not. Never look at more than 30 on this list, 30. The results are listed by relevance. And if you see nothing in that first 30 of interest, number 31, 51, 112 aren't going to be any better. So if you go through 30 and don't see anything, then you have to redo your search. But let's, for our purposes of example, we found one. It's about hormone signaling. Let's add that to our search and see what that gets us. Now, we've done a search to this point, and we made a bunch of choices over here on the left. And I don't want to lose those choices I'd made as part of my search. And if I just go back here and modify my search, I'm going to lose all these choices on the left. So to keep these choices, you want to go up here to where it says recent searches. So at this point, you go to recent searches, click that. And you're going to pick this last set. And it's listed as set 7. So up in the top here, you're going to combine those 563 results plus these other terms that new terms we came up with. So hormone, and these were both in that article, or phytohormone. And we truncated them. And this word signaling. So it said hormone signaling. I'm going to break it out a little bit. So I want to do this set of 563 and these new terminology I came across, hormone or phytohormone, which means the same thing. in the context of my search, and a form of the word signal or signaling. So that's my search within this set of 563. Search. And I come up with 44. So a golden rule of searching is if you come up with a result set of between 1 and 50, that's 50, that's where you stop. That's your final set. You don't try to break it down any further because then you run the risk of actually removing things that might be useful. So I would look at all of these 44. So just to review, or the next step, of course, is getting the full text, and we already talked about that. Many of these records will have the full text attached to them. If you don't see that, then you're going to go in the record, and if it's not, you just can't download immediately, you click the Get Full Text, and it goes to the catalog. And like in this case, it says the article's available from either of these links. If you ever get in a situation where you clicked 3 times and you don't see the full text, please contact me. So 1 or 2 clicks, if we have access to it, you will get it. If you go to 3 clicks, no full text, basically just copy and paste this information, put it in an email to me, and we will get it for you. What I don't want you to do is spend a lot of time looking for things. 2 clicks, 3 clicks, no full text, copy, paste, send an email, move on to the next one. All right, we've gone through our search. So I just want to do a little bit of a review here right at the end. Remember the biology subject guide, use that both as a way to filter through all the information you have access to and also to get access to library resources from off campus. Remember that define represents these secondary sources, which are very important to understanding the information in primary literature, plus a variety of other things. It can lead you to primary literature and so forth, topic ideas, search terms, all those things. Remember that review articles can be very important, but again, for this particular tutorial, you might be interested in these 2 particular secondary sources. Then remember, identify. Identify is where you're going to find evidence through generally primary literature. There are better sources than others. Remember this one, whose niche, again, will get you articles that Grinnell College students in the past have found useful. Students, in fact, who took Bio 150. But this is the best source. And this is going to provide the most in-depth coverage of the life sciences. And then remember to locate the full text, generally within 1 or 2 clicks. But if no full text within 3 clicks, copy and paste the bibliographic information and send them to me. So that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good luck with this project. If you have any questions, please send me an email. Thank you.